Have you ever felt the need to find some beautiful and free fonts out there for your game development or game design needs, but just couldn't find? Well, search no more, because I've researched for a while and came across these 44 fonts that I've categorized in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 categories that I'm going to go through in this video with you and tell you my opinion about them. And of course, I'm going to be putting them in the description down below, all the free links, so you can search for them and download them for your personal usage any way you want it. Alright? Well, let's go then. To start, let's talk about some futuristic fonts, and we are going to talk about those three fonts at first. The first one, Stargaze, is an amazing font. It's a retro-futuristic typeface, so it looks good not only in futuristic games, but also in some other type of games as well, some dystopian games. It might look very good. And honestly, it can look good almost anywhere if you want to. The next one we have here is Starforge. This one is a very strongly futuristic one, very sci-fi, and also a little bit cyberpunky. It looks very nice with futuristic themes, but this one, I don't think it looks as good in other themes here. So take caution if you're trying to put this elsewhere. The third one, the Star Guard, I think that this one is very futury. It doesn't look as good in other styles, but it indeed looks very nice and fits very well in the futuristic theme. Now let's talk a little about the glitch theme. The first one we have here is Glitch Inside, and it's simply the very best font, the very best glitch font you can find, because it incorporates everything a glitch font should have. Every scratch here, every offset, every color changing here, and it's very simple and straight to the point and screams glitch any way you look at it. So it's the perfect one if you're looking for some glitch font. The second one is Dr. Glitch. It's a kind of a simpler version than the font before, but I think if you don't want something over the top like the last one, you might use this one. It's a little bit better. Finally, we have this debug font, and I think it looks amazing. It's personally my favorite glitch font, but take caution that for it to look so nice, you have to do this horizontal offset here, just so it looks better. You can see this without the offset doesn't look quite as good than in this scenario over here, for example. And it's my favorite one, the debug font in the glitch category. Now, going to the pixel/retro category, let's talk about all those fonts here. The first one is the Level Up font. It's a very beautiful, very nice pixelated font, and I'm not quite sure, but I believe this one was used in Undertale. If not, it was a very similar one. If you know something about it, please comment below. But this one is one of my favorites, indeed. Next, we have this Arcade Machine 80s retro font. I mean, this is as retro as you can get. You're not going to get any retro than that. So if you're going for this look, I guess this one's the only font you will ever need for this look. The next one is the Broken Console. It's a very famous one. You can see a lot of tutorials out there, a lot of games, pixel games incorporate them. You might have seen this before. It's just nice to find it here. And it's very simple to use, very simple to find. And it's very nice to look at. It really incorporates the pixel style with a nice typography. Finally, we have the Yoster Island. And this one is actually my favorite in this category, because this one is pixelated indeed, but it has a little bit of style. You can see it looks almost italic by default, and it does have some alterations here and there for some letters, and it just looks stylish in my opinion. It just goes beyond the basic idea of a pixelated font. Next, finally, we have the last one in this category, the retro category. That is the SNES font, the Super Nintendo, and you can just mimic this look however you want with this font. So if you're looking for something like this, I don't know, for a racing game, it might be a nice choice. Next, we're going to talk about cartoon fonts. And there are a lot of them, because most of the game fonts you can find out there are cartoon fonts. But believe me, this list is already filtered enough. So let's go. The first one is Super Mario 256. And there are some variations of this one out there with other numbers. But this one I think is the best one. And just looks very nice, and it's very useful if you want to mimic the look of Mario with your game. It can be used in dialogues, in headlines, and everything, and it's just creative. It's just a creative font, you know? The next one is Gimiria. I don't know if I did pronounce it correctly. Gimiria. Anyway, it's a very nice font, but I believe that this font, like some others, looks the best when you put some gradients inside like this. The next one is the Dirty Cartoon font. It's a very vanilla cartoon font. It's something that perhaps you could see in a kid's cartoon in the 90s and early 2000s. It just looks something like straight out of Congregate or some Flash game you would find in the early 2000s. And it's amazing if you're going for this look. I think it fits best in a really cartoonish game. The next one is Kid Games. There's not much to talk about this one, except that it really fits well in kid games. Who would have thought? The next one is Cartoonist Cookie, and it's a very basic and vanilla cartoon font. It's useful not only for cartoonish games, but for everyday usage. You can find it almost everywhere. Many tutorials out there use this font, and it's a very jack-of-all-trades font. I like this one very much, and that's it. That's a very nice font. The next one is Gamer Station, and this one is a little bit more opinionated. It just goes a little beyond of what you would expect for a game font, a cartoon game font. It has a little bit of style, it's a little bit off. It's very nice. I kind of like this font for this, and it's one of my favorites indeed. Finally, we have the Arco font. It's not so much a cartoon font as it is a kid-friendly font. And I think it's an amazing font for some headlines and for some soft looks, if you're going for this, for some very friendly looks. And it's a very, very fat and friendly font. Up next, we have Scrubland, and it's a very opinionated font. It's a font that you can use almost everywhere. As you can see in this menu over here, you can put it in the headline and in the options as well. It's very kid-friendly, but I believe it's not so much of a cartoonish font. You can just use it in other contexts without losing some of the charm of this font. Up next, we have the Bomb Sound font. It looks very similar to the last one. However, it's a little bit more shy, a little bit more organized, more default, more vanilla. And if you're looking for something like the last one, but like this, well, you just found it. Bomb Sound is the font. The next one is probably my favorite in this category, because if you're trying to make something like these exclamations over here, there's indeed no better font for this. It's very, very, very over the top, and it's an amazing font. Very colorful, very vibrant, very strong. Blood Blaster is the name. Amazing font. Nordic Light is a little bit more well behaved, and it's okay. It's a very kid-friendly font as well. And there isn't much more to say about this font, it's just well behaved and very nice looking. Up next, a little bit more about sports fonts. The first one is Game Day, and this one is very, very sportsy. I was just going to say you can see this font working in American football, and lo and below, there's an example with American football here. So if you're going for a sports game, I guess you can't go any wrong by choosing Game Day. Next we have Gamey. It's more like it's a font more used for those kinds of headlines over here, those kinds of templates, those kinds of headlines, the titles, and it's a very strong and opinionated font. So if you're looking for this type of look, you just found it. The next one, Motion Control, I've categorized it in the sports category, but honestly, it can just fit anywhere, because if you look at something like this, you wouldn't necessarily see this in a sports game. It's more of a little bit of a cartoonish font and a little bit of a sports font, but actually you can use this any other place you'd like indeed. So take that into consideration if you're looking for some general usage font, as we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this video. Well, now let's talk a little about violent, quote-unquote, fonts, because I'm going to include some horror fonts here and a little bit of brush fonts. Some are going to be more violent and some are not. Let's go over the first one. The Game Over font is a very famous one, and it's a little bit violent indeed, but it's also very beautiful. You can put quotes with this, okay. You can make a very stylish look and elegant look with this font. It's a little bit hard to mix stylish and elegant, but this font just does the trick. And it's one of my favorites indeed. If you are looking for this kind of style, you just found it. The next one is Okami, not the game, unfortunately, but this one is very, very zombie-like. You have seen this one everywhere before. And it's very default if you're looking for something like this. The next one is Gore. It's a violent font family, indeed. and it's just violent. It's not a brush font, but it's very strong, and it actually fits better in some cartoonish violent games and not in a proper horror game. You would never see a Resident Evil game with this type of font, but you would see something like No More Heroes with this kind of fonts, for example. Very violent game and also very cartoonish. So that's my take on this one. Coven font is not so much a horror font or violent font, but it just screams something, it just shows something futuristic, but at the same time a little bit dark and tense in this font, you know. You can see some Stranger Things vibes here. And I don't know, it's a very strong font that I wouldn't be using everywhere, but I kind of like it, this one as well. Finally, we have Anima, and this one's very vampire-y, you know. Anything with those kind of corners like this is very dark and horrorish font. No, Nosferatu. You can see that those fonts really scream those kind of vibes. And this one is very fit for this, if you like this style. It also reminds me a little bit of Inside. So that's it. Let's continue. Next, we have a little off category. And this category, all fonts here are my favorite because I love some fonts that are a little off. And I'm just going to go a little bit faster through them because they are just this. They are a little bit off. They fit in little bit odd games, but they also fit in other places if you're looking for a little bit of style. If you're not looking for that much style or something more sober, the next category is going to benefit you a lot. But in this one, every single font I find very beautiful. Some are more over the top than others, but some are not. Let's go through each one of them. First, we have Nezuko. It's simply amazing. It looks a little, it's an amazing font. Game On, it's not so amazing. It's a little bit, it is also a little bit of a sports font, but it's a little bit off, as you can see. It has the same style, the same energy here of this type of style. The Warden font is actually my most favorite of all of those fonts because you can see this font in the thumbnail as well of this video. The Tsuki font, it's amazing. It just looks indeed a lot of like the font that you would see in Journey, for example. The Virgil one is the font used in Excalibur Draw. There is a very nice site to draw diagrams if you're a developer. I also recommend it a lot to use it. You'll not regret it at all. And most important, Excalibur Draw is a free site. The Wisp font just goes a little bit over the top. You wouldn't want this font for dialogue in normal scenarios. It's just so beautiful. It's just like a dream font, you know, dreamy font. The Junk Dog font is very much like the first one of this category, but I like this one a lot. It has its own style indeed. Cutlass, a little bit more wonky, more piratey. It's something like something you would see underwater, something relating to pirate themes, like you can see over here. And it's also a little bit off font indeed. And finally, we're going to talk about some everyday usage fonts. Those are fonts that you can use for ordinary dialogues, for some menus, and for everywhere else, for subtitles in your video. Let's go through each one of them. The first one is Linote, and it's a very accessible font, very readable, very beautiful, it's a rounded sans family with it indeed exhales good vibes, and it has irregularities that give the warm and naive look. So, I don't know, it's one of my favorites. I've used it a lot in this channel before. Fonarto is a little bit stronger and not that much accessible, but I just love the A's and O's in this font. They just look like small foxes. And I don't know, I think it's a very stylish font for a very stylish game. Signica is like a Roboto font, but with a little bit of tweaks here and there. And it's a very stylish, and it's very simple and straight to the point. But it's also very readable and accessible. And it just has this little touch, its own touch, its own style. And it's very, very nice font. The Cosmos family is also a very readable font, but it comes with its own style, mostly in the C's and the S's, this flattening of the letter. So if you're looking for something like this, just found it. Kennet is also a little bit cut around the corners. You know, it's just a little bit more cut here and there. and a little bit more squarey, a little bit more robotic if you want something like this. And finally, we have Capriola. It's also very much like Linote that I showed you just a month ago. But I don't know, there's just something about this font that I like a lot. And I guess I'm going to be using this one from now on for some subtitles. And that's it, guys. If you like, please give it a thumbs up. If you like different videos about game development, game design, game marketing, and many things in between, consider subscribing because this channel is all about it. And if you'd like some further tips on where to use those fonts and some resources to match fonts and find the fonts used in some games, please ask below and I'll be glad to record a new video tackling this subject. Okay? So that's it. Bye. See you soon.